Well, folks, this is the last episode where we interview a guest in the way that we have been doing for a few months and through the summer now. We're going to change the podcast, hopefully just one more time, because last year we've undergone a few different kind of format changes, and I'm hoping that this is the one that feels right. So today, episode 199 is the last that you will hear at least of the weekly podcast. I'll explain more, but of the weekly podcast of this format where it's a one-on-one interview. There will be more in the future, but that will not be the main show. Starting next week, which will be episode number 200 of the First Mint, if you can believe that. It's been 200 episodes in just over 2 years. That I never even thought of how many that is until I started recording this exact clip. Anyways, for episode 200, we're going to change the format. We're going to go back to a talk show style, which was very similar to what we did when we used to have the live show way, way back, and that we've done on Spaces many times. But it's going to be recorded, and it's just going to be me and my brother, the real Phil D, and occasionally some other guests. And we're going to talk about the thing that brought us all together in the first place: sports, metaverse, Web3, NFTs. And we're going to go through the different topics of the week, the things that are happening on SoRare and Dapper and Candy and DraftKings and all our favorite platforms, as well as just other stuff that's going on in the sports world and in sports tech, because honestly, that's such an exciting sector right now. And obviously, between Phil and I, we have a lot of opinions. We have a lot of takes. And I've heard a lot of different type of feedback over the last 6 to 8 months about the show, and inevitably I feel like this is what's going to work. It's something that's sustainable for us, because having a talk show is something where we'll always have something new to talk about, but also we'll be able to make it more regular. You'll have two voices that you hear from every week, no matter what. We're going to record it on Monday nights privately. It won't be online. You won't be able to watch it live or anything else like that. It'll be a bit more of a focused conversation as a result, and it'll come out either late Monday night or early Tuesday morning. Right now, the podcast come out at 1 a.m. Monday morning. So I guess it'll come out at 1 a.m. Tuesday morning. So the podcast will change. It'll be a day later in your week. So for the people that listen to podcasts on Monday mornings, I'm sorry, but there won't be a fresh First Mint podcast every week. It'll come on Tuesdays, although it will maybe be even a little bit longer than it is now. So you'll have at least a little bit more material. As for one-on-one interviews, we're still going to do those, but they'll be a little less frequent. We've had some fantastic people on the show, a lot of different really amazing guests, but we're going to make those just a little bit more scarce, maybe one or two per month, and appearing probably a little later in the week, like on a Wednesday or a Thursday, but still with some really good guests and really great conversations. But that's the announcement. Episode 200. We're going back to our roots. We're going back to talking one-on-one about all this stuff that is happening here. I guess one-on-one. Occasional guest, guest co-host to kind of hang with us and shoot the shit, and making this, a bit more of a community vibe, making the First Mint a place where you kind of come and learn and talk about and get some hot takes on all these sports projects that are kind of floating around that we're spending, buying, trading, selling, whatever that is. It's been an unbelievable ride to do this for over 2 years, and honestly, the right format of the podcast is something that's kept me up many nights. I've never really been quite sure exactly what that should be, because the space has changed. The stuff that we were passionate about has changed, or at least a little bit, or the way that our community is passionate about it has changed as well. So we're going to change our podcast one more time to something that is a little easier, a little bit spicier, and hopefully something that you guys all enjoy. As for today, the last of the current format, we have a very interesting guest, Bored Elon Musk. Yeah, that's his name on Twitter. We don't know his real name. And actually, what's interesting is that his name is Bored Elon Musk. He has like 2 million followers on Twitter. And he told me during the interview that this is not the first time that he has taken on a pseudonym, that he's made up like a totally new persona. He's actually done this, he said, he thinks 10 times. And this is the one that actually worked. Now, Bored Elon Musk mainly tweets about tech and gaming adoption. He's kind of a sci-fi nerd, the same way that I am. And actually, for literally the first 20 minutes of the show, we mainly just talk about sci-fi, which is way off topic from anything that we wanted to talk about, which was gaming. But naturally, that's kind of the way some of these conversations go sometimes. I wanted Board Elon to come on and tell us his story, and then also tell us his take on Web3. He's somebody who's worked in gaming for a very long time, for most of his career, and he's got some interesting takes on Web3 gaming, which I'm starting to believe in more and more every day. That is something will, kind of take us to the mainstream. I'm seeing some of our favorite apps, favorite projects start to roll out really fantastic games. And I'm starting to see maybe where they could actually intersect, where a lot of newbies, people that don't use crypto right now, could actually get into it through gaming. So for the last episode of our current format, I wanted to bring in somebody who's actively working towards that and who also shares a lot of the same kind of nerdy interests as I do to come and chat about that. So I hope you enjoy my interview with Board Elon Musk, and we'll be back Tuesday next week with the revamped format where you're going to hear me and my brother, the Real Phil D, every single week on the First Mint. What's up, everyone? It's LG Doucette, and you're listening to the First Mint, a podcast about Web3, business, and sports. Before we get to the show, a word from our sponsors. Watch, play, earn, redeem. It's that simple in the newest game from Bleacher Report. During NBA on TNT, test your trivia knowledge, and for every correct answer, you can earn BR tokens. BR tokens may unlock future access to limited quantities of real-world and digital assets, which are planned to be made available via an online marketplace. Terms apply. See brw2e.com. Nothing on today's show should be considered financial or trading advice of any kind. Please do your own thorough research and make your own trading decisions. This is not advice. Ladies and gentlemen of the First Mint, we have a very special guest for you today. Someone that we tried to interview actually last fall, but I actually rebuffed him because I was like, I'm going to do these investigative podcasts where we're going to pop the lid on things like Autograph, which we did, which was fun. But you people, our audience, our wonderful community, wanted some interviews. You wanted me to ask some really interesting people some really interesting questions. So we have Board Elon Musk on the show, sporting his incredible avatar. So if you guys have a chance to run over to YouTube and check it out, it's pretty good. It is a little trippy. I like how the head's floating. But dude, Board Elon, how you doing, man?
Good. Yeah, the people demanded my presence, and I was not going to say no. I was not going to turn them down. So I'm very excited to talk to you today.
You know what this is like, talking to you like this is I would say that there's a lot of things like we're living in the future, but we just don't really think of it as the future. So even talking to you like this, I'm like, this is straight out of like Tron or something like that, where, from the 80s, where it's like you are speaking to a giant like digital head that just like barks things at you.
It's definitely like, Wizard of Oz meets the Tron,
yes.
The Tron sort of end boss, master control program. That was the inspiration. And of course, the real Elon Musk. I've tried to make the face look a little bit less like him over time, though.
I was going to say, I would say your presence right now is less evil than you're making it out to be. I would say it's maybe a little closer to like Zordon from Power Rangers or something like that. Although it's not the exact same look, but that's the vibe I'm getting from you.
Yeah.
I feel like you're more of a helpful guide for me than a villain.
Well, anyone who's a Simpsons fan might remember a character named Hank Scorpio, and that's very much the model of who I am. So he's like super evil, but he acts nice, he's friendly, he helps Homer out with like, getting his house set up. So that's kind of the role model for me.
Is that the best episode of The Simpsons?
That is the best episode of The Simpsons. I mean, by far.
It is.
The second.
Yeah, it is, right?
The second best was the one where they went to New York, and they don't show that one too much anymore. Too many references to the Twin Towers, but man, it was a good episode too.
Right. Yeah, that one was. I do remember that one. That was the when he's at the bottom of the Trade Center and there's the Kafkalash guy.
Yep.
That's like one of the best lines where he's like, he's like, can I get some drink? He's like, Mountain Dew or crab juice? And he's like, ugh, I'll take crab juice. And as like a, whatever, young teenager or whatever I was like, what's wrong with Mountain Dew? It was like one of the first like peer pressure moments I felt of someone dissing something I liked, but I didn't know why.
Yeah.
So that was a comment. That was a really good one.
I always appreciated The Simpsons because of their longevity. They swap their writers out every 2 years or so to keep things fresh. And I can say that after running this thing for almost 10 years now, it definitely gets hard to keep coming up with stupid inventions and funny tweets without hiring other people to help me out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair, man. Tell me about the Board Elon persona. Like, you have a massive following of all names that you could have chosen to be your like online persona. Why'd you go with that?
Well, I will say Bored Elon was not the first attempt at this. It's probably the 10th that
Oh.
actually succeeded. I created a bunch of other parody accounts and tried to create these characters on Twitter, and nothing quite hit. I picked Elon back in 2013 just because, he was kind of a rising star, a very interesting character, and it just took off. And little would I have expected that guy ended up owning the platform, right? That I actually built this following on. What a crazy turn of events! But he was just, he's already sort of a cartoon character, so I was like, let's just take an exaggerated version of that and run with it. And a lot of people in Silicon Valley and the tech industry liked it, helped me grow it, and got me to where I am today.
Oh wow. So you're like a professional like online persona maker.
Well, no, I mean they were always just
You said it was your 10th, dude. You said it was your 10th attempt at making something like funny and online. So
Well,
it's like, is that your job? Like, what I mean? Like you really tried, man.
professional would imply that I've made money doing that. So, I certainly have made money like leveraging my visibility. But no, I mean, I've always been a creative guy in real life and tried different things, and it was always a bit of a side project. Bored Elon was very much a side project for the first 5 years. Just like, I'm sitting on the toilet and I thought of a funny tweet and I shot it off. And about 3 years ago, it transitioned to like, oh wait, no, this guy, this character can actually do a lot more than my real life persona can in terms of career, which was a weird moment in my life because I went to college and like did all the things to be successful, and I was successful, but then Bored Elon became way more successful, so I've sort of transitioned to him being the primary day-to-day role for myself.
Wait, so what do you consider success with the Bored Elon persona?
Well,
I really want to dig into this, man, because I always see you online and you have almost 2 million followers, and it's so curious, especially like Twitter is so front and center right now for like everything. Like the meta this week is like go private so it'll boost your freaking engagement. Like there's so much stuff. Like Twitter is, we're always talking about Twitter. So, with you, I find the story so fascinating to have started this like parody account. It was fun. You tried other things. This is what worked. You got some help. What do you consider like what is success now running this like side hustle persona person?
yeah, well, I mean, the real metric of success was being able to transition from it being a side hustle to being the full-time, career. And that happened about 2 years ago. And that was a strange moment, right? Like basically deciding to leave the video game industry, a well-paying job, a respectable gig, and just telling my family like, "Hey, I'm gonna give up that 9 to 5 thing with a consistent paycheck, and go basically into Web3, and leverage this distribution that I've built." But that was success because what it did for me was it gave me access to opportunities to invest in companies, to partner with people, and to put out my own products. And right now we're in this, people say attention economy. If you can't get attention, if you can't reach a lot of people, you're gonna have a tough time selling anything. So I finally decided to like, take advantage of this megaphone that I built. Yeah. But honestly, I never monetized Bored Elon until like 6, 7 or years into it. I definitely put in the work first.
You built that leverage, right? Which is so valuable, as a creator or a content creator or whatever, is to like have the name first and then decide how to make money on it, right?
Yeah, build the trust and credibility before you just, a lot of people will build 50,000 or 100,000 followers and then all of a sudden start taking sponsors. It's like, that might be too soon.
There's nothing wrong with that, Bored Elon.
This podcast sponsored by Coors Light.
I fucking wish we were sponsored by Coors Light, man. That would mean we were like on a different plane. Like you got to get hundreds of thousands of downloads if you want to be sponsored by the Coors Lights. We're not there yet, but I mean, I will say we built a pretty great audience and community originally in the NFT space, and we have monetized it with advertising, and that's been fantastic. I never really set out to do it, so happy to do it. And we also threw like an educational festival 2 years ago that was like super fun. That we got it was free for everybody, but then we got the brands to sponsor it. So I will say I'm happy that we leveraged when we did.
I now apologize for shitting all over your plans.
I don't care. I don't give a shit, man. I'm not offended. I admire you, and Maybe this will inspire me to start my own parody account to then build up. Because also, like, in the NFT space, Web3, like, memes rule no matter what. Like, it's like that is like whatever else it is right now. Like people like to just buy and thrive on like the things that are weird and piss people off. Like right now, everyone's buying like Bitcoin NFTs mainly because it's pissing off the Bitcoin people. You have the hottest thing in January was like the memes project. The biggest accounts are ones who just post the funniest memes. So it's like I'm totally down for that being like the king of the attention economy. What title do you like give yourself? Like I'm assuming some of your IRL people know about your bored Elon persona. Like what do you refer to it as?
What do I refer to it as? Well, when I use the term like pseudonymous persona, that
Mm,
word doesn't really resonate with a lot of people. Like they know the word
mm,
anonymous, but I don't like to use anonymous.
yes.
It's got a bad connotation to it.
Right.
So for like non-techie people, I mean it's funny. So my wife is one of the most non-techie people I know, and she embraces all this crazy stuff, but she's like doesn't really get into the weeds of it. But yeah, when I'm talking to just like family and stuff, I don't go into the weeds on this. I don't reveal that I'm bored Elon Musk. I just I just tell them like I work in the crypto industry. I invest in stuff. I build stuff, but I don't get into the weeds. But like, what do I call bored Elon Musk? I mean, it's just an alternate identity, and it's my primary
Mm,
identity that I use for work. And it's funny to say that, but like when people go to work, they are a different person than who they are at home.
ooh.
So you have
Oh,
the same face, but you have a different persona and
deep.
character. So yeah, I just took it to the
Yeah.
next degree, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna wear this mask at work, and just like build that reputation up. And then when I come home, I can be the dork that nobody cares about, and you don't know who their name is.
Yeah, it's deep, man. That's deep. I like where you're going with, at work we put on a mask. So really, bored Elon is no different than what everybody else does when they get up and go to work every day. Are you like is bored Elon, does it hold a lot of traits from your actual personality, or are you like literally projecting a completely different person right now than your dorkish self?
Yeah, I mean now it's definitely way more me. The first 5 years
Okay.
for sure. I only posted on Twitter. I never replied. I never shared my voice. It was a
Mm,
very one-dimensional
mm,
caricature, and then I got bored of doing that. I was like, this is fun. It's a
right.
shtick. It got me to where I am, but now I'd rather it just be me. So it's definitely a hybrid. Like when I do stuff like this and go on Twitter Spaces and whatever, that's just me. I'm not playing a character anymore. That sort of loses its interest over time. But I reveal enough of my personality without revealing my identity because that typically just isn't
Mm,
relevant to these kind of conversations.
right. Okay. That makes sense. Well, I want to know about your personality, but you don't have to share very much. However, we do have a few things I did want to cover today, and this is honestly based on the kind of stuff that you talk about. Obviously, we're going to talk Web3 gaming and NFTs because that's something where obviously our circles kind of intersect. But before, I think we can get a little bit more personal because I did notice that you touch on sci-fi, you touch on video games quite a lot. Which, like, listen, you were saying you're a dork. I'm like a nerd at heart. We're supposed to be the sports channel. At the end of the day, I just kind of end up wanting to like learn about comic books and like new Arthur C. Clarke books that I've never read and stuff like that. So let's talk about sci-fi to start. And for people who want to hear about the Web3 gaming part, you could skip ahead. But dude, what is your like out of the entire sci-fi genre? What is your absolute top like IP or like movie, book, series, whatever? Like, what is the absolute like pinnacle for you?
Man, it's just so cliched to say it, but for me, just based on when I grew up, the Matrix really set the bar. Um,
Mm,
I did grow up in the 80s. I was too young to appreciate kind of the Blade Runners and Running Mans of the world. I go back now and I watch all
yeah.
that stuff, and it's great. The problem with sci-fi is even though the stories are good and timeless, the graphics, the quality, it sort of takes you out of it. And there's a little bit of this weird like retro futuristic problem where you're watching Star Wars, for example, and it's like these
Mm,
civilizations can travel through hyperspace, but they're using like a
mm,
CRT monitor, that we would have seen in like Circuit City in 1990. So it just
yeah.
takes you out of it a little bit. The other one that we talked about is Tron, and Tron is just like this amazing Disneyfied version of a sci-fi movie. But I think it works so well because it's like a physical metaphor for what we're all doing, which is living inside of this, internet machine. And I just loved how innovative it was, and I hope they make more of those movies. Legacy was great, and rumor is they're going to make a third one soon with Jared Leto apparently.
They have been swirling around making that third one for a while now, and I've been kind of trying to follow that. The second one, Legacy, was shot, or at least the parts that were outside were shot in Vancouver, which is
Yep.
where I was living previous to the pandemic, where I lived for 6 years. So it was kind of funny to see that, and I would always go on these like nighttime bike rides and listen to the soundtrack and stuff. And I just thought the treatment for that movie was so freaking cool for the second Tron,
Oh yeah.
the Daft Punk soundtrack, and then the story just gets so bad at one point.
It does.
Like
It does.
I don't know. Why do they insist, especially around then, they insisted on being like, let's de-age actors with this technology that can do it. And it's like, all right, let's take, like, we could bring in another A-list actor to be the villain, but no, let's just use Jeff Bridges as well to be like a young version of himself that's like just this like creepy kind of
Yeah.
weird computer generated thing, man.
You could kind of explain it away just saying, well, he's a program, he's not a real person, so he can look like he's computerized. But yeah, it's a little weird. It's a uncanny valley effect, basically, is what happens. That tech is way better now when you look at some Marvel movies, but in that particular movie, it was a bit weird. So yeah, hopefully they don't repeat those mistakes. But yeah, the soundtrack, probably the best soundtrack in any movie, in my opinion, and the vibe, the feel of it is really amazing.
What's tickling your fancy these days? Anything that's come out in the last year or two that you're into or that you're looking forward to this year?
I like Dune a lot, and I'm looking forward to the expansion of that. Director did a great job with Blade Runner, but just the expansiveness of it. Like, that's the type of movie that I feel will be timeless, and that you can watch it in 50 years and it'll still be entertaining. And then there's just like amazing stuff, in terms of series. I've really appreciated actually seeing this crossover of video games and entertainment, like TV, like the cyberpunk 2077 anime, and just seeing more stuff like that has been really great.
Dude, I just played The Last of Us for the first time, like in the fall. And now am watching the series, and it's like some of the parts are like shot for shot from the video game. So it's very weird because I'm like, am I like, it kind of feels like I'm playing the game because I played it so recently. So it's kind of strange, but yeah, you're right. It is cool to see kind of like video games break through and to get like licensed as actual series that are successful and that they're like putting a lot of money into, right? Like 20 years ago, if you were telling me that HBO is going to license like Tomb Raider or something like that to make it into their like series of the year, like that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
But
The stories
the
are
world
good,
we're
and
in
people
now.
are running out of stories to tell. You already have a built-in audience basically with this, so it's a no-brainer, and it's awesome that the video game adaptations are good now, right? It's not like the Super Mario Brothers movie, which was just the worst. It's actually like entertaining.
Wait, the new one or the old one?
Yeah, the new one's probably gonna be awesome. It looks great.
Do you agree? Like, they use Chris Pratt in there as Mario, and I don't know. I saw the trailer. I was like, man, I don't know, man. Like, he's supposed to have an Italian
I
accent.
know it's rough because
What do you think of
Mario
that?
doesn't really speak in full sentences in any game, so that's already an odd choice.
It's true.
But yeah, personally, I would have gone with like a Danny DeVito. I think that would be more appropriate. Just a gruff,
Did you go ahead? Did you ever watch the Super Mario Brothers Super Show?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking
No,
about?
that doesn't ring a bell, but I appreciate your East Coast pronunciation of the show.
Oh, yes. I know it's a Canadian thing or it's just a me thing, but yeah, Mario. I got into a big debate about that a couple months ago. But yeah, they used to have the show like that I think preceded or followed the film that was called the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, and it was like an after-school special where it was like Mario and Luigi hanging out in the basement. It wasn't like any of the actors in the film, and they would have like Luigi's niece would come over and like do a dance with her friends. Like, it was like very like Nickelodeon style, like very put on, and they would just go on all these weird adventures, and it was so bad. But it was, I think they'd play video games on it too. Like, they'd be like, all right, let's go play level 6.
I've
Like,
seen the memes of it for sure, but I think they've tightened up their licensing agreements after a few examples like that, and Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and the original Mario movie. So they're a little more careful with how their IP is used now.
Would you want like a Dune, something that is so visually stunning, like it's any Denis Villeneuve movie, really, but something like a Dune, something that's very sci-fi. If you had to like go through some kind of metaverse experience, which has been tried as like a promotional gimmick like a million times. Go to this site, it's a metaverse of the movie, but it's always kind of shitty. What like if there was some kind of extension that went into Web3 or just in metaverse in general, it doesn't have to be on chain. What do you think would work, or like what would you want that to be? Because something like something like Dune, if you're a big sci-fi fan and you're a big film buff, which I think we both are, something like Dune is like a fantastic experience, right? It's a long movie. You're like the scenes are really moving. It's really beautiful, and you're excited for the second one. You want more, but there's nothing really available for you to have more besides watching like the featurette on YouTube or something like that, right? Like if there's some kind of added layer to that in our world, what would you want that to be, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely seeing a lot of movies that are made using Unreal Engine. The new Matrix movie used that, and I think for a bunch of the Star Wars series, they're using that as well. So they're building out these environments, like being able to walk around in those worlds, and not necessarily interact in any way, but just kind of like get up close and experience that. I think would be pretty cool. I think for me, I don't love VR personally. I find just the hardware aspect of it pretty cumbersome and uncomfortable. But if you're a hardcore fan of a movie, of a universe, I think just being able to do that would be great. Most of it is pretty dystopian, unfortunately. Like most sci-fi is really dystopian. I'd prefer there to be more like cheerful, optimistic places to go hang out. But yeah, I think the issue right now is the cost of doing stuff like that for most of these brands isn't worth the production versus what they're going to make. Like you can use it as a marketing gimmick, but no one's probably going to pay you to walk around in the Dune environment. So I think that's the
Right.
issue right now.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess and the idea of like, I mean, on the NFT side, where we're talking about like NFT tickets and stuff like that, which I think could be really useful. I just think we're probably a couple years away from somebody really like implementing something truly interesting or special.
Well,
there,
it
right?
probably
Let's say
won't be
that.
Ticketmaster because they like to get their cut of ticket sales, and if you can just sell them directly to your buddy, not a good business for them.
No, yeah, no, that's for sure. Do you ever play when you go to the movies? I don't know where you live. I'm assuming it's in the U.S. somewhere. Maybe not. Do you ever do movie theaters where you are have like the pre-movie trivia that you can play on your phone? Do you guys have that?
I think I've seen it a few times. Honestly, it's been hard to go to movies lately. Like I just, it's been hard to convince myself to go. Like you get to a point now where you just buy an 80-inch television and a really good surround sound system, and you can get like any movie you want at any time, and not like have an annoying person next to you checking their phone. And it's just kind of preferable. So. I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah.
It's like I almost prefer the movie theaters now, where it's like they serve beer and dinner, and you
Oh
pay a lot
yeah.
more, but at least you're going for that experience versus just a bigger version of what you have at your house.
I've been hearing that like the Blockbuster is going to come
Huh?
back. And it's mainly because like Gen Z apparently is like just bucks whatever trends that we're into. So since like they've come up with like streaming is the only thing that matters, like we all stream, they want to go like retro. So I've heard that like in the next couple summers, young people are going to want to go to movie theaters again, especially at post pandemic, where it's like it's a place to hang out with your friends and have fun. And that's what I've been hearing. So I feel like some of the studios are starting to like line up some big movies to come out in the summer as like a theater experience. Which would be fun. I miss kind of like the Blockbuster experience of going to see like the big summer hit there, but I can also relate to what you're saying, that it's like most of the stuff I watch at home comfortably, and it's
Well,
very nice.
I'd be very
So
curious to go and see like a 13 or 14-year-old go to a movie and watch the screen for 2 hours and not pull their phone out. That would be a interesting experiment.
I don't know. Maybe they'll come up with a solution for that. Maybe they'll figure out something you have to do mid movie with your
Oh
phone.
my God, yeah.
Would be nice.
In the middle of this Tarantino film, you have to like take out your phone and text 7542
Oh,
to Kill Bill, and oh
text.
wow.
Yeah, no. I was gonna say like scan a QR code or something like that. Like pick up some NFTs mid movie,
That's
right?
kind of fun actually. If it was like a
That
scavenger hunt type movie, that's interesting.
Yeah, something
Okay.
if you baked it into the medium, but I don't think that would fit like the traditional mold movies. Real quick, let's before we talk into Web3 gaming, let's level set with a bit of video game chat. What are you a big gamer? Are you a game enthusiast? We're talking about Mario. Like, what's your status?
My status. So I grew up playing video games pretty extensively, basically through
What?
college. So like most of the games were single player Japanese RPGs, kind of like Chrono Cross, Xenogears, Final Fantasy, really nerdy shit. And this was kind of pre like online gaming. Once online gaming emerged, then it got into like real time strategy games, StarCraft and Command and Conquer and Age of Empires,
Hmm.
a little bit of Counter Strike. I'm really bad at shooting games, at first person shooters. And then lately, just like as somebody who has more responsibilities and family and all that stuff, I got myself a Steam Deck, so it's kind of like a really big Nintendo Switch, portable.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, I mean, that pretty much plays like all the major games now, which is super impressive. And basically, when everybody's
Hmm.
asleep, I'm just in bed playing a few like 20, 30 minutes of games a night. That's the extent of what I can handle at this point. But yeah, I mean, I stay on top of it, and having worked in the gaming industry for 10 years, I mean, I was in the weeds, so like I kept on top of
Hmm.
games more than I actually had time to play them, unfortunately.
What are you playing right now? How do you spend your 20 minutes a night?
Lately, Vampire Survivor's been really fun. It's just like this game where it's kind of like Castlevania top down, and you have a ton of creatures and monsters that try to kill you, and you just try to you just try to mow them down as fast as you can. It's good.
Oh, one of
Yeah, yeah.
these.
It's called like a
Yeah, yeah,
rogue
yeah.
survivor type of game. It's fun.
Rogue Survivor
Yeah.
game. Oh man, Vampire Survivors. A little I Am Legend action in
Yeah,
here.
it gets pretty nuts.
Nice.
There's like tens of thousands of enemies that come after you, and it just it's just like
Just mow them down.
it's really intense, but it's also really soothing somehow to just kill all these creatures in mass. Yeah,
Satisfying. Satisfying to kind of like mow the lawn,
yeah.
as
I
you
mean,
would say. Okay,
I
right
do
on.
want to play like God of War and Cyberpunk and all these things, but I just find it hard to play games that are 100 plus hours to beat. It's a little time consuming for me.
I don't know who has time for that,
Yeah.
man. Like that's a kind of like a good segue into like where gaming's going and stuff like that. Because I find that I only recently realized in the last year or two how much people play like mobile
Hmm.
games, and I mean anything from a game similar to what you're describing, like those whatever there's like different war ones that I always see advertised on Instagram, to like people play like whatever like
Yep.
Bejeweled or that kind of stuff. And that is like hundreds of millions of people play those games every day. And it's like barely even a game at that point. It's like an addiction. Like they have to do it on their
Yeah.
phone, right? And I only just recently clued into like how the mobile game market is just so fucking big. Like for a long time, I was like, gaming, that's just whatever the latest big game is, like a God of War or Call of Duty or whatever. But I realized that it's
Yeah,
not,
I mean,
which
most
is
people
pretty
play
intense.
games on their phone. Most of them are in Southeast Asia and basically non-Western countries.
Yes.
And some games are super simple and they feel like they're just slot machines, like Candy Crush, and others are really intense and have
Candy
like
Crush.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
oh yeah. I mean, it's a very addictive game that basically relies on like 2% of the audience wanting to spend money, and they do. Um, and it's still gaming. It's maybe not everybody respects it as much, but I still treat that person as a gamer of some variety. And I think the future is
Mm.
going to be mobile and browser, and it's going to move away from like I have to spend $600 on a PS5 and get this giant setup. That's not how things are going to go. If you want billions of people playing games.
I mean, I could see the console, like the big console, still sticking
Hmm.
around, but being something that is for like the more hardcore
Yep.
person, right? Like in the way that it's like, I think that'll like some people will always want massive setup, huge PC with like mega game chair and like huge freaking thing, 80-inch screen with your Xbox. Like I think there'll always be a market for that because that in its own is like really cool if you're into it. But at the same time, like in terms of mass adoption, I agree. It's like it's going to be a lot simpler. What's your take on Dookie Dash? That's kind of like the flavor of the hour, right? Like the first. I mean, it's not the first Web3 game, but it is from kind of like the project that does like 70% of the NFT volume every week,
Yeah.
right? And is attracting pro gamers. What's your take there?
I will say I'm objectively bad at it. That's a For sure. I can't even beat like 80,000 points on that game. So the Twitch reflexes is not something I'm great at. But no, I think they've done a great job. I
Mm,
think it's pretty clear that in terms of Web3 blockchain games, like it's got to be in the top three in terms of just number of hours played. Uh, Compared to like how long it's been around. And it's done a really good job of just being this very memey game that people automatically want to just post, videos of and pictures of. Right now, it's
yeah.
fairly exclusive, right? Like there's only 30,000 people or so who can play the game. But I hope that they release it to the public so that you can play it for free, even without prizes. And I think it's going to do really well. It's a sticky
Mm,
game. It's kind of this endless runner idea. There have been hundreds of other games like it, and that's fine. Most games are just reskins of other types of ideas. But I think they wove it into their story or their IP very well. And I mean, when I play it, it's addicting. Like you don't want to just play once; you play 5 to 10 times. And I think they did a really great job with it. And I hope that they sort of showed that there is this nice middle ground of games that isn't as basic as a Candy Crush, but doesn't necessarily need to be a
mm,
full-on like World of Warcraft. Something that you can just play for
right.
10, 20 minutes and walk away works really well. So I think they did a great job. I give them an A minus for that game.
An A minus. What's your general thought? Like, what's your thesis or whatever on Web3 gaming as a whole, right? Because we're in such a I feel like that's one of the real forefronts of the space where it's like, the normal gamers, okay, they hate NFTs, they got anytime that Blizzard or Discord or anybody is like, we're going to use NFTs, the gamers fucking freak out. But now, you've had some good examples of Web3 gaming, and in the past they were very Ponzonomic, but something like this is like, no, this is an interesting use case. Like, this is a hard game to be the best at, but something that's pedestrian enough for everybody. It's something everybody could play, and it's tied to the biggest IP in the space. That's significant in my opinion. But zooming out, like what is your purview on all this?
I think that digital assets, if we're calling NFTs digital assets, these things have existed in games longer than any other vertical, right? Like art and other fashion, none of those things were digitized, but in games you had for a very long time things that were virtual that had value. That included just the games themselves. Like a long time ago, people used to buy CDs or cartridges and their game was on that physical thing, and then that went away, and now people download their game file, but that's something they pay for. It's a virtual object. It's a digital asset. The difference is they just can't buy, sell, and trade that very easily. They don't really own it. They're just kind of getting to use it. And so for me, like it's kind of a no-brainer that blockchain is going to be implemented in games. I think the reason that this logical sort of conclusion hasn't happened yet is because the bar is very high for digital assets, meaning that video games have been around for a very long time. The fidelity of games is super impressive. What you can do on like a PS5 or a Steam Deck is amazing. And so the people who are building games on chain from the ground up are competing with, you know, the God of Wars and like the World of Warcrafts out there. And they have a late start. And it's just not necessarily wooing gamers because the games are not plentiful enough and they're not high quality enough. But I believe that will change. And I believe that traditional games will implement digital asset ownership and transferability. So once that happens, to me, like it's a no-brainer that gaming is the best utility for an NFT. And in the meantime, the game we're all playing is just trading pretty pictures and art and whatever. But I think that that's all going to change, and I just don't know how long it'll take. I hope sooner than later, but yeah, I think ultimately the games market will be the largest use case for digital assets compared to anything else.
Do you think like the normal market right now will go away though?
No,
If that
I think
happens?
it'll be like what you see in the world today, like art, right? Like what percentage of people actually buy art as an investment? It's fairly small, and I think
Mm,
relative to how many people use the
mm,
internet, people who trade NFTs is like a minuscule amount of people. So I think it's
right.
going to stay about the same size, and I think the games market will eclipse it, and then 10x it, and then 100x it. And I'm banking on that, and I'm very biased to that. But I think just like somebody who's studied the gaming business and watched the trajectory of how tech has influenced the product, I just think it's a no-brainer that this is going to happen.
What do you think it's going to be? Like give me like a super hypothetical made up prediction of like this EA is going to drop this game like this and everyone's going to play it and it's going to be on chain.
I think a game like that is going to I think a game that you would see on like the PlayStation Network, like that quality, is going to drop early 2024. In terms of the traditional establishment of publishers like an Activision, EA, Epic, etc., I think they're not going to do this until 2025, and that's a while. It's 2 years, but I think that's my personal prediction for this. And in the meantime, you're going to get a lot of sort of like mid-core indie style video games that are produced by a team of 5 to 10 that are super fun, but they're not going to be like the massive selling like 100 million copies type of game until 2025.
Have there been any games that have broken through, like that were built by a team of like 5 people in a basement?
I mean, you look at some like a game like Stardew Valley, which is kind of like an Animal Crossing type of
Mm.
game. That was built
Yeah.
basically by one guy, and it's made millions and millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Or like Among Us, right? The game where you're trying to guess who the murderer is. Again, very small
Yeah.
team, millions of dollars in revenue. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to have like the super fanciest graphics to win and be like the next Call of Duty. I mean, back to Nintendo. I
No.
mean, they're renowned for that. Like a game that is okay graphics does really well because people love the IP and they love the game mechanics more than they care about the quality of the graphics.
Have you invested in any like Web3 gaming companies?
I have, yeah. I mean, I've probably placed at this point like 20 bets as a angel investor into various games, and because of that, I see what's in
Mm.
development. I think
Awesome.
I have a good sense of what's coming, and that's why I'm probably more bullish than the general public because they're just pointing at a handful of games that are out today, which maybe are not that attractive to them. But yeah, I have a good
Mm.
sense for what's coming this year and next year, and I think that these I can say very confidently and without bias that these are games that would, be easily sold on the Steam store or the Epic Games Store, PlayStation Network, etc. And so I'm really excited for the rollout of those, and for them to start being considered just games the same way like normal games are that don't have blockchain implemented.
Man, it's such a strange battle. Like I met a guy, I moved out to a small town a couple years ago, like during the pandemic, and I met a guy recently who is like some kind of game designer, has worked at some of the major studios, at least in the Vancouver side. Um, and we talked about we actually ended up he convinced me to download like Parallels, which is like the
Hmm.
window proxy for for Mac. And he convinced me to like play Sea of Thieves with him a couple times. And I was like, this is great. Like I'm having fun. We're on a pirate ship together. Like this is cool. I haven't really had like a fun, online gaming experience with a buddy in a while. Um, but anytime I talk about what I do, he's just like, fuck
Yeah.
off. Like he just doesn't want to hear anything about NFTs. And I'm not trying to like sell him being like, you should really get into this. Like I'm not trying to do anything like that. I'm just literally like talk about work, like, hey, this person on my podcast the other day, they're funny. And he's like, oh yeah, you and your NFTs. And it's funny because I feel like he secretly wants to do
Hmm.
it. You know what I mean? Like it's like you dig your heels in so deep, but you secretly kind of
Yeah.
want it at this. Like it's that type of like rebuttal
Yeah.
from him. And it's like I'm like I don't know what it's gonna take. Like I sent him Dookie Dash, and I was like, hey, check this out. Like one of the top Twitch guys in the world is like streaming himself being number one. Like that's pretty. I'm sure you know who this guy is,
Hmm.
right? And nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like I wonder for those people that are like just even just literally like he's an industry player. What is it going to take for someone like him to not he doesn't have to convert. I think looking at it as like converting is the wrong way to look at it. Just like what is it like is his boss, the studio he works, going to be like, "Hey, we're working on this blockchain game, like suck it up." Like is that where it's going to come from and he's just going to swallow it or what?
I mean, it might be that too, but I think it's gonna come down to that type of person finally having a situation where like they got tired of a game that they don't want anymore, and they could sell that game to
Mm,
somebody else or an item in that game. Once they do that and see that,
right.
it's gonna click. And I always go back to that analogy that I mentioned earlier of just like physical games. Like when game companies started to transition from like, selling physical cartridges and CDs to players, a lot of people didn't like it. They're like, oh, I have to download a file and then what if I want to sell my game to somebody and I can't go to GameStop anymore and do all that. There was a lot of resistance to it. But then over time, people realized like, well, I'm never going to lose my game. No one, they're not going to get lost in a fire or like have the circuit board get messed up. Like I can always go download the game. I can put it on multiple devices. And so the tech eventually won people over, but it was a messy onboarding for a while. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. The other problem, is that if you're really somebody who grew up playing games like World of Warcraft or multiplayer games, you know that there are people out there who don't really enjoy playing the game. They go and just farm stuff and then sell it on the gray market on eBay and whatnot. And your friend probably thinks that those people are going to come in droves and they're going to ruin his favorite games because they're just not playing for fun, they're playing for money. And that's a valid criticism. So I think we're going to have to see a bunch of games where that is prevented, where you can't go in and basically ruin the experience for everybody else because you're farming and doing all these things that are maximizing or optimizing for money versus success in the game itself.
Yeah, it's true. There are so many strange. Even when I was playing Sea of Thieves, I asked him, I was like, "Who plays this game? Like, who are we going to encounter out there on the ocean?" And he's like, 12-year-olds and like guys who are here to like hardcore win the game. And then he's like, and then this is, and I mean this in no way towards anybody. He was like, and then Russian guys. And I was like, oh. And he's like, the Russian guys are going to be really weird. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, I don't even, he's like, you'll see. And then literally we like, it came upon a ship and there's you have to collect chests, right? The chests are kind of like the loot boxes, or not the loot box, but like they have different items. And there's a bunch of chests in the water and we just come upon the ship. And my buddy's microphone wasn't working. So we're on a phone call. So I'm the only one who could speak in game. And this Russian guy comes on and he's like, hello. And I'm like, hello. And I'm like, are you taking these chests? He's like, no, you can have some. And I was like, what? Like, are we going to kill each other or what in the game? And he's like, it's fine. Just don't take like the red ones. And I was like, okay. Like, and then he came on our ship and like looked around and I was like, this is so weird. Like but maybe that guy is kind of like a farmer, like you're saying, like he's just trying to get certain items or something to sell on the gray market. But I don't know, it's strange. It's a strange world when you go out there in the video game world. And again, I don't mean that in any way towards the Russian people. I just thought it was hilarious that he was like, you'll meet a Russian guy. And then like 5 minutes in, he's like, here's a Russian guy. And I was like, what?
CFPs.
Like, how did you know?
Yeah, I mean,
yes, yeah, I guess so.
I personally do not like talking to random people in video games. So I will compete with other random people, but I do not want to talk to them. Like I go to video games to escape and remove myself from this weird world that we're already in. But that's just my preference. Obviously, there's a lot of people who love to compete with randos and share chests in ships.
Yeah, or fulfill whatever mission it is that they're trying to do. I always respect though, like even like you're saying, people that grind and sell in the gray market. It's like I got some respect for those people out in the world. Whatever they're doing, it's like you're finding the edges, you're finding the stuff, buying getting the stuff that nobody else wants, selling for profit. Like power to you, And even when I started NFTs, that's kind of what I felt I was doing, right? Because I started almost 3 years ago, and I was like, this is so like nobody is even here, but I'm gonna buy some stuff, and maybe there'll be something later, or maybe somebody else will want it or something, right? So it's not too different. Elon, do you have many NFTs?
I mean,
big
my
NFT collector
current wallet, board.eth, has like 2,400. Now, I will say that many of those were just sent to me unwanted. How many have I purchased myself? Probably 500. So above average, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely have accumulated a good amount in my primary wallet, and no, I'm not like a degen. I'm not sitting there day to day trying to like make a bit of money off of those trades. I'm more of a holder. If I believe in a project, I want to hold it for a year or more. And I really got into it because of the apes. Honestly, I just kind of loved the story they built and got in on that early. And since then, everything else has been a loss compared to that initial trade. Can't really top that. But yeah, it's a wild market. I would say that most of my NFTs these days are for games, and basically buying items for games that I'm going to play in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking through your wallet. You know what it feels like, since you also know Tron Legacy. You're the only person that will understand this comparison. Whenever I go look at somebody's wallet, like just peruse through OpenSea, it feels like that scene. When the kid is in Tron, or he's in the world, and the weird fake Jeff Bridges that he doesn't know isn't his dad yet is like, let's look at your disc. And he like takes his discs and like opens it, and it shows like his whole story. That's what looking at someone's like NFT wallet feels like. I'm like, oh, disc. And I'm like, oh, interesting what you've done. Like it's a weird like personal thing. And I'm like, oh, you have an ape. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's just this kind of weird
because,
thing.
in the real world, you don't necessarily see someone's bank account and all the money they have.
No.
But the thing is I can control how much you see, right? Like I don't have to keep all my stuff in that wallet. And then the things that are more like visual, NFTs and whatnot, that's the equivalent of me putting my Ferrari on the front driveway and letting people see that, I was able to afford that. So yeah, that it's more of that. It's that very kind of showy aesthetic type of value that you're flashing. But yeah, I don't necessarily want people to see how much Bitcoin or Ethereum I have, so that maybe stays in other places.
No, and that's fine. Yeah, I don't mean to, I just think like someone's NFT history tells a
Hmm.
story, right? And I'm sure looking at their ETH history does as well. But I just think it's really even just I'm just looking at your two board apes for anybody who wants to know. Board Elon has two board apes, um, and it's just even just looking at the dates when you purchase them and how much you bought them for is fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, okay, so you got in on the first mint and then you like FOMO'd in June, right? Like it's like that's such an
Yeah.
interesting I can just see that right away, right? So it gives me a sense of like your awareness of the market, let's
Yeah,
call it,
exactly.
right? And how tuned in
Yeah,
you
and I,
were.
and I think you
So I
get
love
a
that.
sense of like
That's cool.
loyalty and how long has somebody been with a project and get sort of that
Mhm.
OG status. I think there's something special to that for sure. It's again, it's like there's a difference between somebody who just bought a Ferrari yesterday and somebody who owns like a 1960s version and they maintain it themselves. So like with NFTs, as you said, it
Mhm.
tells a story and it kind of gives you a certain level of like pedigree and how early you are and how
Yeah.
engrossed you are in the ecosystem.
What's your biggest miss in
I
NFTs?
mean, 95% of the stuff that I meant is a dud. I
No. Is there anything that you didn't? You were like, I don't want
oh,
that,
and then I passed
and
I
it's
passed
and
on
it's a
it.
hit.
Oh,
Something you passed or something you like you minted and you're like this is stupid, you sold it right away paper handed. Is there anything like that, like the pang of
oh,
regret?
wow, that's a good question. Probably
I'm glad you don't think about it. Clearly it's not something top of mind for you, so it's
no. I
good.
mean, if you have one big win, it sort of absolves you from the others. But probably Doodles. Yeah, I was like, they're cute. A little bit of like a Lisa Frank vibe. Not really personally into
Hmm.
it, and it seems like it was really easy to draw them.
Right.
So so it's like this is like a low effort thing. I don't
That's
know.
that's easy to
Yeah.
draw.
Like I don't like modern art because it's easy to recreate. So it's the same with doodles. I was like, this is not that impressive. So they're cool. I appreciate what they've done with their brand. It just that was a huge miss. Like
Sure.
I definitely could have minted 100 of them, and I didn't. So whoops.
Got it. Right. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I've never heard that as like a criticism or a remark, let's say, of NFTs. This looks easy to draw. Like to me, all of it is easy to draw.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like
board
I
apes aren't
could
that hard
draw,
to draw
not that
either.
I could draw some of them. Yeah, but even some of the like, it's not necessarily about whether you could have drawn it. But I think that's an interesting way to look at it. Be like, this is so basic. No thanks. And then it became a hit, right? So, hey, why did you ask us for our ENS names the other day?
Ooh, yeah. So that's coming soon. That is for a side project that I am going to launch probably in the next 2 weeks. Today is February 2nd. Um, and it's a really
Okay.
big secret. But I promise it was not engagement farming. I am going to do something. What I will say is I will be airdropping people stuff on on the ETH mainnet soon. And it will be a game. And
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I'm excited. I put my name in there, so you
Okay.
better deliver. And by the time I think it's probably going to drop around the time this interview comes
Well,
out, so
the price
it'll
will
be
be
perfect
right,
timing.
that's for
So,
sure. So it's only upside for me to deliver.
okay, all right, perfect. Elon, we're at the end here of the show. I think we're going to end on a high note, but I do play a game at the end of every show, and it's
Hmm.
called Would You Rather. Okay, and I give you two options, and you tell me which one you would rather. Okay, it's a very simple game. We're going to start right now. Would you rather you're okay? So I'll give you the scenario first. You're stuck in a time purgatory where you can only play one game. Would you rather the game be Dookie Dash or Candy
Hmm.
Crush?
I would go with Candy Crush, even though I think it's a low quality game. Dookie Dash is a high stress game, and to have to play that endlessly would just not be very enjoyable. Whereas with Candy Crush, just kind of casual, play at my own leisure, moving stuff around with my finger. So if I'm stuck in purgatory, yeah, it's definitely Candy Crush.
Would you rather I gift you and you cannot sell it for 5 years, an ape or a punk?
You know what? I'll take a punk, because I don't have one, and I would like to differentiate
Easy.
the portfolio. Yeah.
All right, last one. The phone rings, and it is somebody who wants you to be an advisor on one of these two projects, and you can only choose one, and you're the only person in the world who can do it. On, would you rather advise on the Yuga Labs gaming division, whatever that is, or a Denis Villeneuve remake of Akira?
Oh man, one of the best questions I've ever been asked on a podcast.
For people who don't know, while you think about it, Akira is this like classic Japanese like anime movie that starts off with like these motorcycle gangs in New Tokyo and then evolves into this like totally berserk film, but it's a classic. And they've been talking about remaking it for a while. I know Chris Nolan was in chat set for it at one point.
And your question was, which would I rather?
You're advising. It's like you pick one of two projects that you will advise on. So you're part of it. They take your ideas, all of Yuga's gaming, or Denis Villeneuve Akira remake.
I am more qualified for the Yuga advisory role. I would personally prefer to do the Akira project, but I would not be able to contribute, I think, properly to that job. And so ethically, I would take the Yuga gig.
Got it. Okay. Great answers. Dude, pleasure to talk to you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Much. It was great. It was a very diverse set of topics and questions. I appreciate all the research that you put into it.
This is just turning into me just bringing people on to talk about the things that I'm interested in, like movies and games and sci-fi. It's just mainly what the show's
it's
becoming.
Great. If it wasn't before noon, I'd be drinking a beer right now, but it's early.
Oh, wow. Time zone reveal. Watch out.